Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about the road to the Revolutionary War. Some of this will be review, but we're going to actually go into the Revolutionary War today. And things started with the French and Indian War, which is when France and Great Britain fought for North America. France loses, they leave North America, and Great Britain takes the Ohio Valley. The war cost Great Britain a lot of money, and to help pay the war debts, Britain starts to tax the colonists, and this is also when the Proclamation of 1763 happens. And that says colonists cannot move west of the Appalachian Mountains. And as a result, to the left over here, you can see where France used to be. After the war, France leaves, and this all becomes British territory. And this is the Proclamation line. If you were a British colonist, you were not allowed to live west of that line. And remember, the British picked up a lot of debt because of the war, so they started having some taxes. One of these is the Sugar Act, which was a tax on sugar and molasses. It was the first tax on colonists. Then there's the Stamp Act. This was a tax on paper, and colonists didn't like this tax either, and colonists protest in the streets. And this leads to the Boston Massacre in 1770. So British troops fired on British demonstrators, and the British soldiers killed 5 colonists. And this was the first time that American colonists had their blood spilled, and the tensions increased a lot after this. Britain and the colonists were not getting along very well, and that leads later on to the Boston Tea Party. And this is where colonists dressed up as Native Americans, a type of Native American named a Mohawk. But they dressed up as Native Americans and they threw the tea off the boats into the ocean. And the British responded by closing the Boston Harbor. And there's a military government put in, and Massachusetts is no longer able to govern themselves. So all of the colonists, they're not happy with England anymore. They're starting to be upset. And they have a meeting, and they call this meeting the First Continental Congress. This happened in 1774, and the colonists met to discuss problems with England, and they agreed to arm militias, which means they're going to make their own military. And this is important because it's Americans preparing to fight the British. And the colony of Georgia did not send representatives, but the other 12 colonies did, but they're preparing to go to war now. And then, just a year later, there is the battles of Lexington and Concord. So this was a couple small battles, one in Lexington and one in Concord, where American colonists fight British troops, and they win. 8 Americans killed at Lexington, and dozens more died in Concord. And why is this important? It's because colonists feel confident they can beat the British, and the England and colonists no longer talk. So they're no longer negotiating. They are prepared to go to war, and the colonists feel like they can win a war. This leads to the Second Continental Congress. So everybody meets here, and this was a meeting to plan for war. Instead of preparing for war, now they know they're going to go to war. And George Washington was named the leader of the Continental Army. Then in 1776, the colonies signed the Declaration of Independence. So American colonies declared their independence from England, and Thomas Jefferson wrote this document, and it was to fight for a new way of life, and America is no longer part of England and becomes a new country. And this is when the war starts. Not all of the colonists agreed, though. We're going to learn about the differences among colonists. Patriots, they believed in complete independence from Britain. They were inspired by the ideas of Locke and Payne and the words of Virginia and Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death." And the Patriots were the ones that provided the troops for the American Army, led by George Washington. And Patrick Henry, his quote is just saying, "I would rather be free, give me liberty, or give me death." So if he's not free, he wants to be dead. And these are people that did not want to be part of England. However, there was people called Loyalists or Tories. They remained loyal to Britain because of cultural and economic ties. And they believed that taxation of the colonies was justified to pay for British troops to protect European settlers from American Indian attacks. So loyalists, they're loyal to England. They don't want to leave. They want to stay part of England still. Then there is neutrals. So these are colonists who tried to stay as uninvolved in the war as possible. They didn't carry their way. They didn't want to fight. They didn't want to take a side. And so those were neutrals. So England's war efforts, Britain had a more powerful, well-trained, and well-equipped army and navy. However, the war lost popular support back in Britain. That just means people in England didn't want to fight in the war. They didn't really care about the American colonies. And then the colonial war effort. American colonists had the advantage of fighting a defensive war, and they also had commitment, desire, and understanding the land. They knew where the mountains were, they knew where the trees were, they knew where to hide. And the American colonists had the advantage of a committed political leadership. There's eventually going to be a colonial victory, and the American victory at the Battle of Saratoga led to the Treaty of Alliance with France by Ben Franklin, and France helped with their navy. So the Battle of Saratoga, it's important because the colonists defeated England in that battle, but they come up with an agreement. France and the American colonies say they're going to fight England together. Remember, France just lost the French-Indian War to England, so they're happy to fight them again. And then the final battle is the American victory at the Battle of Yorktown under the command of George Washington with the assistance of the French Army and Navy. So what happened at this battle is the American colonies pushed the British to Yorktown. The colonies won the battle, and the French Navy put their boats all right here, so the British had nowhere to go, and they surrendered. So the Battle of Yorktown was the last battle, and the United States is now a country because they defeated England at this battle. If you guys have any questions, let me know.